Exposed, 10 spine-chilling terrifying tales of the cursed rain unlock haunted secrets to sleep. The rain had started again, an unyielding deluge pounding against the roof like 1,000 frantic fingers. It seeped through the cracks, whispering old secrets, the sound throbbing disturbingly in the air. In Oak Hollow, every droplet carried with it the weight of unresolved mysteries. Children had vanished during storms like this one, shadows swallowed by chaos, leaving behind hearts shattered and homes haunted. And now, as the skies darkened, those memories clawed their way back into consciousness. Inside her small, dilapidated home, Lily pulled Jake closer. Her son sat hunched over countless sketches, creations that chilled her. Bizarre figures sprawled across the pages, but one stood out, a faceless silhouette lurking near the window, as if it were waiting for something or someone. Her heart raced, an echo of dread resounding with each erratic beat. "Jake, honey, let us turn off the lights," she said, her voice trembling. But he didn't respond. He just continued to draw, the pencil moving rapidly, almost possessed. Rumors of Mr. Callahan, the elderly man living a few blocks away, flared like wildfire among the frantic townsfolk. Once a benign figure, he was now painted as a villain, a deranged recluse conducting dark rituals in his basement during the storms. Paranoia gnawed at the foundations of Oak Hollow, cracks formed in friendships as whispers morphed into accusations. Lily's heart sank with each call she fielded at the dispatch center, shadows creeping further into her mind. What if Jake wasn't the only one affected? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The night air crackled with tension as thunder rumbled ominously over the town. Lily felt it all, the oppressive weight of fear suffocating her. She looked out the window, the tempest outside raging like a living nightmare. The wind howled, begging to be let in. Lightning split the sky. In that flash, she glimpsed something outside, the faceless figure hovering, nearly tangible against the darkness. A scream lodged itself in her throat, terror coursing down her spine. She knew she couldn't let it take Jake. Driven by primal instinct, she shoved the door open and stepped into the storm, the rain drenching her in an icy grip. Each step felt heavier, the shadows seemingly stretching towards her as she strode to Mr. Callahan's home, battling against the frantic thoughts of what lay behind her. But as another bolt of lightning struck, illuminating the house, she hesitated. Frozen in place, her heart stopped when she heard it, a whisper, soft and ethereal, drifting through the air. "Come play with us." Jake, panic surged through her veins like fire. She spun on her heels, racing home, the shadows closing in. Inside, the atmosphere had shifted, it pulsed with an unseen terror. Jake's sketches littered the floor, filling her with dread as she clutched at her chest. The drawing of the faceless figure had morphed, the eyes now dark and spoiled, fully aware as they seemed to lock onto her. She lunged for the stairs, a blood-curdling scream bubbling to the surface. Had Jake always been upstairs? The storm raged on, drowning out everything else. What lurked behind those walls? No longer did they shield her, they had turned into a cage of horror. Every instinct screamed flee, but they would fight. Lily stood at the threshold of terror, understanding now that the danger was closer than it had ever been. Lily's breath quickened, the oppressive air thick around her. The shadows seemed to pulse, whispering secrets she couldn't understand. In her heart, she knew, something was profoundly wrong. She raced upstairs, the wood creaking beneath her frantic feet, a symphony of fearful echoes that led to an unseen horror. Each step upward felt like a descent into madness. Running into Jake's room, she was met with darkness, the only light flickering from the storm outside, sending grotesque shadows dancing across the walls. "Jake!" she called, her voice barely piercing the heavy atmosphere. Silence answered. The room was a jumbled mess, papers fluttered about like lost souls, the drawings scattered everywhere. She whipped her head around, searching for any sign of her son. The cold sweat coated her palms as she grabbed the nearest sketch, the hastily drawn figures twisting into grotesque forms, contorted in fear and anguish. Then she saw him, a familiar silhouette, back turned toward her near the window. Relief washed over her in tepid waves, but it was short-lived. "Jake!" She shouted again, urgency clawing at her throat. He turned, and in an instant, terror gripped her anew. His eyes were wide and vacant, a serene mask that screamed of the turmoil within. "Mom." "Thank God." But even as he spoke, his voice lacked the warmth that normally soothed her. "Come here, sweetheart." But he didn't move. Instead, he pointed toward the drawing desk, his small finger trembling. Look, her stomach twisted as she followed his gaze. There, waiting to be revealed, lay another drawing. It was the faceless figure again, but something was different. The being was no longer just a silhouette, now it wore twisted features, an anguished mouth caught in a silent scream and hollow eyes that seemed to swallow light. "They're waiting for me," Jake whispered, a soft giggle following, hollow and mocking. A bone-deep chill washed over her. A wave of horror crashed against her, drowning her in fear. "Who's waiting, Jake?" "Who?" But he simply repeated the words, eyes locked on the drawing. "They're waiting for me to play." Lily felt her heart race. Where could this be coming from? She knew this was her child at least, not the one she recognized. The air crackled with unease as the walls around them started to feel less like safety and more like a trap. Suddenly, the lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness before bursting back to life. In that flicker, a shadow flashed next to Jake, a dark intensity that she could feel hover close. An overwhelming sense of despair flooded her. She sprang toward him, her instincts igniting. "No, Jake. We need to leave now." But as she reached for him, Jake turned again, a slight grin freezing on his face, tinged with a wrongness that sent a shiver down her spine. "It's okay, Mommy. I want to play with them." Frantically, Lily grabbed his shoulders, shaking him gently. "You don't want to play with anyone. You don't know who they are." There was a moment of stillness, and for a brief second, she saw clarity in his eyes. "Mom," he whispered, his voice shaky and uncertain. "Come on," she urged, pulling him toward the door, but before they could move, the winds howled outside, shaking the very foundations of the house. With a deafening crash, a gust blew through the open window, swirling papers around in a frenzied dance, the eerie laughter of children filling the air. Lily stumbled back, terror igniting her senses. In her heart, the truth was undeniable. They weren't just drawings. They were invitations summoning Jake into a nightmare she couldn't fathom. "Mom!" he cried, a sudden desperation coloring his tone. Her breath caught, and in that fleeting moment, a realization struck her like lightning. What if the rain wasn't just a storm? What if it was something far worse, a herald of doom? Just then, a crash from the basement reverberated through the house, shaking the walls. Lily froze, dread pooling in her stomach. What was down there? "Mom, I can hear them. They want me." Jake was fixated on the door, eyes wide with something that felt monstrous, that felt otherworldly, time stilled. In this moment, Lily faced a terrifying decision. Would she try to escape, clutching Jake to her heart? Or would she rush toward the basement to uncover the truth behind the phantom tears? As she weighed her options, another bolt of lightning illuminated the room, and in that blinding flash, she swore she saw the shadows behind Jake take form, dark figures, waiting, hungry, and for the first time, she felt fear seep into her bones in a way it hadn't before. What would follow the storm? The whispers grew louder. What price would she pay for Jake's return? Lily's heart raced as Jake's panic-filled gaze anchored her in that moment. She couldn't let him go. The shadows danced around them, shapes twisting, curling, as though each heartbeat pulsed life into their darkness. With a fierce determination, she gripped his hand tightly. "Let us go," she urged, pulling Jake toward the door. The wind howled again, rattling the window panes like ghoulish laughter. It echoed in the corners of the room, tempting her with whispers that skittered from shadow to shadow. Just as they reached the door, the darkness seemed to thicken, a weight pressing down against them. "No!" Jake shrieked, yanking free from her grasp. "I want to stay. I want to play." Lily's stomach knotted as desperation bloomed in her chest. "Jake, please. You can't trust them." He just stared at her, that vacant look creeping back into his eyes, as if he were losing the battle for control. "They're my friends, Mommy. They say I can be with them forever." In that moment, the basement door swung open on its own, darkness spilling out like a mouth ready to devour her. The laughter of children grew, filling the air with a chilling perversion of joy. It was a siren call, luring Jake with promises she couldn't hear but sensed the promise of unbroken companionship, of innocence lost. Lily had never felt so lost. "Jake! Come back!" she screamed, her voice cracking. Just then, Jake took a step toward the basement, and panic seized her heart. She lunged forward, catching his arm just before he crossed the threshold. The shadows shifted, coalescing, the darkness responding to his temptation. A figure flickered briefly beside him, one of those faceless beings from the drawings, impossibly twisted. Lily's blood ran cold. "Let him go!" she shouted, her voice echoing back toward her in a taunting mimicry. She felt as if she were fighting against a force far beyond her understanding. Then, with an otherworldly hiss, the silhouette surged closer, shadows reaching menacingly toward Jake. Instinctively, Lily pushed Jake behind her, feeling the chill of darkness brush against her skin, igniting a primal fear deep within her. "Stay behind me!" she cried, her hands shaking from adrenaline and terror. The laughter morphed into cries, pain and desperation woven through the sounds. She could feel the eyes of the figures hungrily observing them, the malevolent energy wrapping them in a cocoon woven from despair. "We want Jake!" they echoed, their voices a cacophony of ghosts. "No!" Lily shouted, her throat raw. "You can't have him." The storm outside raged, the furious wind banging against the windows, as if nature itself was caught in the chaos. A shadow lunged forward, and she stumbled back, realizing with dread she was losing the battle, but just then, something flickered in Jake's eyes. The boy inside seemed to fight. She saw a glimmer of her son struggle against the darkness. "Mom! Help me!" he cried, a tear slipping down his cheek. Lily stepped closer, reaching out to him. "I'm here, Jake. Hold on to me." Lightning struck again, illuminating the room, giving her just enough time to see the figures retreat slightly, as if the light momentarily burned them. "Fight them!" she urged, desperation threading every word. "Come back to me." But with each breath, the pull from darkness sharpened. The basement door loomed broader, a threshold to something most terrifying, a trap. "Join us. Be free." They beckoned, insistent and gleeful. In her darkest moment, she realized she had to choose. If she didn't fight, she could lose Jake forever. Her heart pounded in her ears. How much would she sacrifice to save him? With a deep breath, she grabbed a candle from Jake's desk, holding it fiercely, the flickering flame an act of defiance. "You won't take him. I'll fight you." The shadows shuddered, the figures snarled, and in that instant, she felt a shift in the storm, a crack of thunder that shook the very foundation of the house, as if something monstrous was awakening below. She steeled herself. "Whatever you are, I want to let you win." But the whispers intensified, echoing not just in the room but in the back of her mind. "Come to us." Lily, the candle flicked ominously, and she sensed the walls closing in not just from the outside but from within. Was it merely the figures? Or was something worse about to emerge? And just as the first shadows surged with intent, darkness spilled forth from the basement, wrapping around her like a shroud. Lily realized too late that she wasn't just fighting for Jake. Something was hunting them both, ready to unleash a terror that knew no bounds. As she prepared to confront the encroaching darkness, Jake's scream pierced the air, a cry echoing through the very soul of the house. "Mommy! Don't let them take me!" In that moment, she understood the horrifying truth: it didn't end here. Whatever was lurking below wanted them both, and the storm was just the beginning. What had they awakened? The darkness swallowed them, an inky fog pressing against skin and soul as if trying to seep into her very being. Lily felt the cold tendrils wrap around her ankles, pulling her down, anchoring her to the ground. She resisted, fighting with every ounce of strength she had. "Jake!" she screamed, her breath coming in desperate gasps. The candle flickered, illuminating some twisted shapes that writhed and pulsed, taking on the semblance of faces that once had belonged to children. They grinned at her, mocking her futile resistance, their laughter punctuated by the crack of thunder. "Join us!" the shadows chanted. The macabre symphony echoed the rhythmic pounding of her heart, as if urging her to abandon hope, to become one with the darkness that threatened to consume everything. "No!" she shouted again, pushing back against the unseen weight pressing down on her. "I want to let you take him." Jake's small form trembled behind her, and the flickering candle casting shadows danced across his face. For a moment, she saw the fight flaring in his eyes again, the sparks of recognition and fear mingling. It seemed the darkness could only hold him for a heartbeat longer. "Mommy! Please!" he cried, and in that single plea, she saw the little boy he used to be, not the vacant figure inching closer to the edge. Her heart tore, straining against the urge to break free from the shadows that had shadowed them. "Hold on to me!" she yelled again, extending her hand back toward him. Just then, another surge of shadow leapt forward. It encircled her arm, squeezing tightly, draining warmth and hope. She reeled, exposing herself to the hunger of the darkness. But she couldn't let go of him, not now. As she fought against the oppressive weight, the candle's flame sputtered, sending off little sparks that lit up the room for brief seconds. Each flicker revealed fragments of the basement: a rusted bicycle, peeling wallpaper, old toys strewn about as if a life had once thrived there. But something morbid echoed in their silhouettes, the haunting images of children lost to that very darkness. "Forever," hissed a voice from the depths, a deep, reverberating sound that clawed at her sanity. "Join us, Lily. Embrace the eternal night." Shadows surged toward her, perhaps, sensing her hesitation, rising up like a tidal wave ready to crash. "No. I choose the light," she shouted, braver than she felt. With a sudden surge of fierce determination, she raised the candle high above her head, the tiny flame now roaring as if fueled by her defiance. And, to her shock, the darkness recoiled, a vivid display of how even the smallest light could pierce through the veil. "Mommy!" Jake cried out again, and still she fought as darkness clawed at her legs. She turned, yanking Jake toward her, but he was still anchored, his feet dug into the floor as if it had grown roots. "Jake! Come!" she commanded, willing him to break free of whatever hold the figures had on him. With a deep breath, she took a step forward, the candle shining brighter, illuminating more of the wriggling forms eager to devour. They seemed to whisper in furious desperation, their words melded with the crash of thunder like a storm screaming for his soul. But then Jake's feet finally broke free from the invisible chains. He lunged toward her just as the floorboards creaked ominously beneath them, a warning echoed by the deep rumble of the house. "Mom!" he yelled, eyes wide with panic. Lily's heart soared. He was with her. But just as he reached out, a freezing hand of shadows lashed out, snagging Jake's ankle, pulling him back. "No!" In that moment, they locked eyes. Her heart shattered seeing his terror reflected back. "Help me!" he wailed, his voice slipping from her grasp like water. With a sudden fierce anger, something awakened deep within Lily. That primal instinct of a mother protectively roaring against the unknown. Her voice, steady and fierce, shattered the confining atmosphere around them. "You won't take him. I swear it." The shadows recoiled, screeching as the candle flared brighter still, illuminating the true horror that waited just beyond the threshold of the basement, a gaping maw of darkness unmatched by anything they had encountered thus far. But with a sickening realization, she noted something else shimmering within that void, a deeper darkness, something far worse than even the faces tangled within the shadows. Suddenly, Jake's grip faltered. The pull was stronger now, a furious whirlpool of darkness devouring the edges of their reality. "Lily," the fear in his voice sent chills spiraling down her spine. And as she braced for another assault, she understood that the true danger wasn't just the shadows but whatever else lay beneath. A dark force hungered, one that had been waiting, awakened by their very presence. What if they weren't just fighting for their survival? What if they were the opening act for something sinister, bent on dragging them into an eternal night of horrors? With one fleeting moment of hope disappearing into the void, she had to make a choice, one that might lead either to salvation or damnation. Would the flickering light be enough to save them from what lurked at the edge of despair? Lily stood frozen, holding the candle in a shaking hand while shadows swirled with sinister purpose around her. The light trembled, barely holding its power against the oppressive darkness that closed in. She felt exposed, utterly vulnerable in every way, and Jake's scream echoed through the basement, shattering her resolve. "Mommy! I can't hold on." The panic in his voice cut deeper than any blade, and it triggered a primal roar within her. She clenched her jaw, forcing herself to focus on him, on the little boy who still flickered beneath the surface of this chilling nightmare. "Jake! Just trust me." She could barely hear her own words over the angry whispers of the shadows, crawling insistently toward her. With one final surge of strength, she dashed forward, the candle leading the way. But the darkness fought back. Shadows lashed out, filling her with a sense of hopeless dread. The spectral hands grabbed at her, pulling at the hem of her clothes and yanking at her hair, cold and clammy. The air turned thick, almost gelatinous, tightening her chest. "Let go of him!" she screamed, swinging the candle wildly. The flames flickered brighter, hissing and shrieking at the encroaching shadows. Each burst of light revealed glimpses of twisted faces, all contorted with anger and sorrow. Children's faces turned ugly by anguish flared with cruel laughter. But even as the candle flared, consuming precious wax, the darkness answered. A deeper, resonant voice pulsed through the basement walls, vibrating through her bones. "This is your place, your child will be one of us. Join them." The basement began to shake. The walls rattled, and dust began to rain down. Heart pounding, Lily fought against the encroaching dark, desperately reaching for Jake, who was barreling toward her from the grips of shadowy fingers. But the darkness wasn't only at her feet anymore, it was lifting, swirling, like a horrific storm bent on destruction. "Mommy!" Jake's breath came in rapid bursts as he sprinted towards her. She watched his small feet stumble, barely catching the edge of the shadows before he could slip. Terror slapped at her gut as Jake's silhouette twisted with the darkness, his form losing solidity. "Mom!" With a guttural cry, she threw the candle to the floor. The wax shattered, the flame sputtering helplessly as it fought to survive in a sea of darkness. An explosion erupted in her heart, crystallizing fear and unyielding determination. The shadows had dared to touch her son, and they would pay. "Not today!" She screamed, her voice echoing into the oppressive abyss, wrapping around the shadows that encircled them. She dashed forward, the ground shaking beneath her, and reached for Jake with all her might, but shadows surged, wrapping tightly around her wrist. Desperation carved her features as the figures loomed larger, eyes wide with twisted joy. "Embrace us, Lily!" they taunted. "Forever!" In that moment, a glistening glimmer of light pierced through the oppressive veil. A figure materialized in the corner of her vision, a child, small and pale, bathed in an ethereal glow. It was a ghostly apparition, eyes filled with an unsettling mixture of sorrow and hope. "Mommy, don't!" the figure echoed. In an instant, the weight of the darkness shifted. Lily's breath quickened as she saw that this wasn't just a memory. This was a message. Then, she felt the shadows tugging at her again, trying to drag her back down, relentless in their pursuit. With a power she didn't know she possessed, she spiraled and lunged. "Jake! Grab my hand!" An electrical jolt rushed through her, and the shadows screamed, a cacophony of rage and despair as she reached across the darkness. Would it be enough? But as they locked fingers, she could feel the energy flow, a fragile thread binding them to the light. And just like that, the candle's flicker reignited, dawning back to life as if infused with new purpose. Yet, just as hope surged, a new voice rumbled, a deeper growl, a primal sound that raked through her gut, slithering in like ice water. "You cannot escape, the darkness protects its own." With Jake's small silhouette wrapping around her as they united against the shadows, what lay ahead was looming and dreadful, an echo of the darkness preparing to unleash its wrath. They had drawn the attention of that force, and now it was furious. The time was ticking down, their light flickering in a world that thirsted for despair. Could they fight together against the darkness that wanted them, or would they find themselves enveloped by the horrors that beckoned? The shadows thrashed like a wild beast, coiling and writhing, almost alive in their fury. Every whisper grew louder, morphing into a cacophony of torment that echoed within Lily's skull. The warmth from the candle was at war with the clutches of the chill wrapping around her, but the bond with Jake pulsed like a heartbeat, anchoring her to the light they both desperately needed. "Mommy!" Jake cried again, his hand slipping just a fraction. The bond between them faltered as darkness surged like a tide. Lily felt the weight of his little body, her precious son teetering closer to the maw of the shadows. Without thinking, she summoned all her strength, straining against the shadows that clawed at her. "Hold on, Jake. Hold on." A fierce light ignited within her chest, growing stronger with every inch she pulled him closer. The air crackled, charged with energy as though the basement itself was electric with dread. But the shadows were relentless. They hissed and shrieked, wrapping tighter around her. She glanced at the flickering flame, its glow a beacon amidst the swirling darkness. Each sway of the candle flickered with uncertainty, yet it was the only source of hope they had. "I want to let them take you." The anger surged, hot and demanding. She tore her gaze from Jake, allowing herself to absorb every last detail of the dark. There was a pattern to the movement, the shadows seemed to pulse, almost as if they were breathing. Suddenly, she understood these shadows were terrified too. They didn't just want to consume her, they feared her resolve. Lily took a deep breath, feeling a surge of defiance rising within her. "You need to hear me," she screamed, her voice ringing clear despite the chaos encircling them. "You can't have us." The malevolent force recoiled for just a moment, as if jarred by her conviction, but then it swarmed forward, snaking through the tightening space. The sound of wailing intensified, a blend of lost souls echoing with desperation, unspeakable dread clawing at the very edges of her sanity. "Mommy!" Jake's voice brought Lily back, grounding her once more. Even as shadows tightened their grip, she could see the glimmer of hope reflected in his wide eyes. It surged through her, fueling her resolve. She had to act fast. "We have to find a way out," she gasped, her mind racing. Glancing around, she noticed an old, rusted pipe jutting up against the far wall. If they could get to it, maybe it could lead them somewhere, anywhere out of this torment. "Jake, listen to me carefully." As she steadied her breath, she squeezed his hand tightly. "When I say go, run as fast as you can to that pipe. Do you understand?" His nod was quick, instinctual, yet she saw doubt ghost across his features. "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you. Trust me." She could hardly believe her own words, but fear spurred her on. She could not let the darkness win. With a nod that filled her with a mix of dread and hope, she took another deep breath and shouted, "Go." Jake dashed forward, bolting through the shadows, his small form already swallowed by the dark. She followed, fighting against the relentless hands that clawed at her legs, but this time, she pushed back. She wouldn't let them take him. But as she reached the pipe, an unholy roar erupted. Something frigid and powerful crashed against her mind, rattling her bones. The shadows twisted and screamed, a swarming mass of twisting faces and outstretched arms, determined to tear them apart. Lily lunged for Jake, grabbing his arm, and they both fell against the rusted metal. An oily substance dripped from it, and she could already feel the shadows tearing at her once more. Their desperate breaths echoed off of the metal, terrible fears tearing through heart and mind. Climb! With a fierce determination, she pulled Jake upward, but the darkness shifted around them, howling and twisting, its rage palpable. Would the metal save them, or was she leading them straight into the maw of despair? As they clung to the pipe, the shadows met their first significant resistance. But the last tremor before escape echoed. Through the walls, a perilous reminder: the darkness was only just gearing up for a reckoning. What awaited them on the other side, and would they meet their fate as they fought against the shadows that were hungry for their souls? The moment they grasped the pipe, an icy wind surged, swirling fiercely around them. Darkness throbbed like a heartbeat, but far worse than the physical presence was the unbearable weight of despair. The shadows howled and lunged, hungry for their life force, shrieking as if to mock their attempt to escape. "Mommy!" Jake's voice shook, pulling her from her fear. His grip faltered as the shadows snapped and twisted even tighter. She could feel the pungent odor of decay creeping closer, and her heart raced, slamming against her chest. "Don't look down. Just hold on," she shouted, her voice trembling, determination clashing with terror. They pulled themselves against the cold metal, inch by agonizing inch. Lily's breath came in short gasps, and each inhale felt like inhaling shards of ice. The darkness felt sentient now, a living entity determined to seize them. It twittered and chittered, voices scratching at the walls of her mind. Whispers of doubt swirled through her thoughts. "You'll never make it. They have you now." She shook her head, defiance rising again. "Shut up!" she screamed, and as if in response, shadows surged, encircling them like a serpent. The ground trembled beneath her, thick with an energy so malignant it prickled her skin. "Mommy, please!" Jake's eyes were wide with panic, reflecting the flickering candle that still clutched its flame, a testament to their hope. "I can't hold on much longer. Just one more push," she shouted, gripping him tighter. They'd have to climb. It was their only chance. She had to believe this pipe led to freedom. Before she could analyze the risks, she wrapped both arms around Jake and with all her might, began to pull them up, but the shadows curled around her legs like gaudy ribbons of death, pulling and yanking as they tried to drag her down. Every bit of strength she had fought against them, her body shaking with exhaustion but fueled by raw instinct to protect her child. Lily reached for the first ledge of the pipe, fingers clawing at the rusted edges as if they were the only safety tether in a storm. Desperation surged within her as she grunted, using one hand to steady Jake and the other to climb. "Mommy, I can't." Jake's cry split the air, a pinprick of terror that burrowed deep into her heart. "Yes, you can. Just follow me." She pushed a wave of fear aside, forcing herself to appear brave even as darkness crawled closer with malignant intent. She needed him to see the resolve embedded in her spirit. With each movement, the shadows hissed decay mixed with sorrowful lament and aching anger. They were losing ground, but not without a fight. Suddenly, the pipe trembled fiercely, and a wave of darkness crashed against Lily, sending her tumbling backward. "Jake!" she screamed, reaching out, but he stumbled, too. The shadows seized him, dragging him further into the depths, the candlelight flickering like a dying ember on the edge of night. "No!" Lily lunged, grabbing for him, feeling the slip of his shirt beneath her fingers. The shadows shrieked in triumph, tightening their grasp on them both. As she wrestled for his hand, the oily substance coated her fingers, melding with the heavy despair surrounding them. A feeling of complete dread was magnified as she realized the pipe wasn't just a refuge, it may very well be their tomb. With one last desperate instinct, she tightened her grip and pulled Jake upwards as the shadows shrieked a symphony of terror. But even as they clawed at her, something radiant flickered deep within her. The flicker of the candle illuminated a figure emerging from the darkness behind them, a ghastly silhouette slowly materializing, deformed, twisted, and beckoning. What did it want? As the apparition drew closer, it seemed to whisper the secrets of the shadows, secrets that might either bind them forever in darkness or show them the way out. But could they trust it, or was it another puppet of the encroaching void? Lily. The figure intoned, and she froze. That voice, it was familiar. Mommy. Jake yanked at her sleeve, heart pounding. The shadows surged once more, ready to consume them entirely. What would the apparition reveal? And was it too late for escape? As the darkness closed in, terror washed over her, but there was no turning back now. A rush of dread froze Lily's breath. Jake, hold on. She gasped, momentarily torn between the figure's haunting familiarity and the desperate reality pulling them under. Mommy. Jake cried again, his small fingers slipping from her grasp. Shadows blasted against her, howling like banshees, angry, hungry, insatiable. Every ounce of her being fought against the looming darkness, yet here was a flicker of light, a beacon intertwined with shadow. Stay back. She yelled, feeling the tremor of her own voice, half commanding, half pleading. The figure halted as she swung Jake upward, wrapping her arms tightly around him, an anchor in the frenzy of chaos. Please, help us. She barely got out, heart thundering in her ears as she squinted into the dark. The apparition smiled, its features obscured yet distinctly humanoid. I am not here to hurt you, it whispered, voice dripping with an unsettling calm, yet the shadows danced eagerly around it as if uncertain of their allegiance. Lily shivered. There was darkness in that voice, an alluring promise intertwined with danger. What do you want? She spoke through clenched teeth, terror electrifying her veins. Freedom, it said simply, drifting closer, and the shadows recoiled as if at a reprimand. But these shadows, they're hungry. For years they've trapped souls like yours, and once they taste your fear, there is no escape. Jake tightened his hold, burying his face in Lily's neck, trembling. The chilling breath of the shadows caressed her skin, whispering twisted secrets that made her gut twist. What do you want from us? She demanded again, and the reflection of her own heartache flickered in the figure's eyes. To survive, Lily. But I can only guide one. The apparition's gaze swung towards Jake, searching, dissecting, unfathomable layers of despair crafting a veil between them. You must choose him or you. A fresh wave of terror crashed down upon her, drowning her in an ocean of despair. No. She cried, hope and fear colliding violently. I won't choose. The shadows surged in unison, and the ground cracked beneath her, a hellish chasm gnashing hungrily. Make your choice. The figure commanded, its voice resonating with an otherworldly echo, each syllable hitting her like an avalanche, crashing through her resolve. Mommy, I don't want to go. Jake screamed. Panic surged again, ravenous and suffocating, wrapping around her heart like the shadows curling around them. I can't choose. You hear me? She yelled back, defiance sparking in her core, flooding her with adrenaline. Lily grasped for a solution, anything but this. The shadows hissed, rhythmically pressing in as if to a morbid symphony now in full crescendo, despair, dread, determination, the battle boiling within her. The apparition leaned in. Embrace the fear, let it guide you, it whispered, but each word aspirated in caution. Or decide. Time is running thin. Lily felt the walls tightening, the shadows breathing louder with impatience. But something in the depths of her heart flickered back to life, refusing to bow to the request. She glanced back at Jake, his eyes wide, reflecting terror. Hold on. She shouted, tightening her grip on the pipe's edge, but as she prepared to claw upward, a piercing light flared from the apparition, warning intertwined with heartache. It reached out, its hand now glowing, shimmering with shadows intertwined as if offering salvation or certain doom. Only one can join me in light, save yourself. The last word echoed, rippling through the choking darkness. What would she choose? Could she transcend the shadows, break free with her child, or would the desires of the darkness claim them both? With every second that slipped away, uncertainty coiled tighter. And then it happened. The shadows screamed, surging forward, ravenous, dragging her and Jake toward the unknown depths below. Would their hope extinguish, or could the flickering light break through? With desperation clawing at her spirit, she lunged for the figure, awash in torment and skepticism, as the ground threatened to swallow them whole. This was a choice constructed in terror, tearing at the very fabric of her will, a choice that could seal their fate forever. As the abyss loomed closer, Lily's heart pounded in sync with the shadow's wrath. Would they be consumed, or would light prevail against the bitter chill of despair? "Mommy, what do we do?" Jake's voice shattered the night. But the answer hung silently in the shadows, waiting, hungry for her choice. Lily's grip slipped as the darkness writhed, pulling her and Jake deeper into its maw. It felt as if an eternity stretched out in those final moments. But then an unthinkable thought slammed into her mind, shaking off the fog of panic. She would not choose. No parent should have to make a bargain like this. "Jake, close your eyes," she shouted, desperation weaving through her voice. The shadows lunged closer, their icy breath curling around them like skeletal fingers. Lily took a breath, feeling the frigid weight of the air and the thick stench of decay creeping forth. "We'll fight together." The apparition's eyes widened. "You cannot resist forever," it warned, its voice now tinged with irritation, as if her refusal was a bitter taste it would rather not endure. With a primal scream, Lily hurled herself backward, carrying Jake with her, as the shadows surged forward, a dark tide threatening to drown them. The ground buckled, fissures crisscrossing beneath her feet. Would this chasm open wide enough to consume them both? "Mommy, don't let go." Jake whimpered, eyes squeezed shut, his small body shaking in her arms. Strength surged into her lungs, igniting a raw force within. "I won, I promise." The apparition lunged forward, its sinister smile twisting into something far more sinister. "Rejecting the choice means accepting another fate," it hissed. But as the shadows recoiled slightly, perhaps sensing the fire in her heart, Lily felt the stirrings of hope within the dread. If the shadows drew strength from fear, then perhaps it was time to turn their hungry appetite against them. "Jake, stay with me," she whispered fiercely, feeling adrenaline pooling deep within. "We are stronger together." Jake opened his eyes, his small frame trembling. "Together," he echoed. For a flicker of a moment, the shadows quieted, bewildered by the defiance that surged between mother and son. Lily took a step back, summoning a reservoir of courage. "You think you can take us? You think you can tear us apart?" she cried, her voice rising against the roar of the dark. "I won't let you." Suddenly, an angry screech erupted from the depths of the shadows, splintering through the air like shattering glass. "Your fear is our feast," echoed a multitude of voices, the shadows twisting, thrashing, and coiling like serpents. In that instant, the apparition's glow dimmed, flickering like an old lamp about to die. For all its power, it seemed frightened, perhaps even weakened by their united front. Lily focused on the light, drawing from it. "You want fear? Here!" she roared defiantly, letting her own terror spill into the air like a gushing wound. "I fear nothing if it means I protect my son." With that declaration, the shadows recoiled as if struck. The light intensified momentarily, engulfing them both. But would it be enough? In an instant, the din of chaos ramped up, the shadows snarling, clawing, desperate to reclaim their hold. The ground beneath them fractured wider, an abyss of despair threatening to swallow them whole. "Hold on tight," Lily cried, tightening her grip around Jake. She could feel his breath hitching against her neck, could sense his heart racing in sync with hers. Black tendrils lashed around her ankles, trying to pull her down as she fought backward, clawing against the weight of the darkness. "We are not yours," she screamed into the void. And suddenly, the shadows slackened. The apparition wailed a sound of pure rage, and then, clearer than ever, amid the chaos, a voice reached them. Choices can break chains but only if they are destroyed. With that mantra echoing at the edge of her mind, Lily turned her focus inward. Jake, we are powerful. Our love is stronger than this. As the shadows writhed in fury, she felt the walls around them pulse, whispering her fears back to her, then compressing. She couldn't tell where one began and the other left off. Her skin prickled, the light a beacon pushing back the shadows that screamed their hunger, but was it enough? As Jake clung tightly, a new wave of shadows surged forth, muttering promises of solitude and despair. Choose. They hissed, voices wrapping around her like chains. Your son or yourself. The light dimmed again, flickering like a dying star. Would this moment of resilience crush them, or surge them forward to salvation? Lily's heart thundered in her chest. Time was slipping away. The light was fading. What do we do? She thought desperately. Another moment stretched, loaded with urgency and yearning. They were teetering on the edge, with the abyss craving their final choice. Could one act of defiance forge the path to their salvation, or would they find themselves lost in the shadows forever? The ground began to tilt, shadows seemed to dance with delight. Lily's breath hitched. What came next would decide everything. Lily's desperation surged like a tidal wave. She squeezed Jake's hand, feeling the warmth of his tiny palm against her skin. Remember our light, Jake. Together. She implored, her voice fierce against the howling darkness. As shadows clawed at them, fear pulsed through the air, but within it, hope thrummed a steady heart beating against despair. It was unyielding, a force that refused to bend. Together. They echoed, both their voices trembling but steadfast like a single sword unsheathed in battle. The shadows recoiled, sensing the unity igniting between them, their malicious whispers morphing into an angry cacophony. Join us. They screeched, but Lily wouldn't yield. You'll never have him. She bellowed, the words erupting from deep within like a volcano ready to burst. At that assertion, the ethereal apparition faltered, its crooked smile fading. The shadows pulsated, the very space around them vibrating with tension as if the universe held its breath. Fear is the currency here. The apparition spat, irritation lacing its tone, reminding Lily of her own vulnerability. Then let us show you what love can do. She shouted, adrenaline rushing through her, sweeping away the frigid grip of the dark tendrils threatening to snatch her away. With Jake beside her, their breaths synchronized into a rhythmic chant of defiance. Together. The shadows twitched like a wild beast cornered. The flickering candle burst into flames, the light expanding, filling the room with an energy that felt alive. It wasn't just a beam of brightness, it was a purity that shattered despair, illuminating every corner in stark reality. Faces within the darkness morphed from twisted menace to childlike wonder, revealing momentary flashes of innocence, the lost spirits of children like Jake. Mommy. Jake said, eyes wide, reflecting the light of hope, the warmth of mutual strength. We can do it. Yes. Lily screamed. No one takes you from me. The shadows shrank back, their hunger wavering as light sliced through their cloak of despair. Leaving a trail of glimmering dust, the candle flared, igniting the sorrowful entities that flanked them. Run to the light. She urged, not just at Jake but toward the apparition, now trembling, caught off guard by their collective power. Shadows twisted like vines around the apparition, desperately attempting to restrain it. But with love reaching deep, they wrested control back from a past that craved defeat. Lily willed the abyss to give in, commanding the shadows, cursing their existence. You don't own us. She declared, each word a stake piercing through their malevolent heart. We will not succumb. We will not choose fear. With every ounce of strength, she pulled Jake to the forefront, the light engulfing them both. The air crackled like static as they dashed towards the narrowing path of safety. The shadows surged with a primal roar, a united front trying to reclaim what they had lost. You are ours. Join us. The voices wailed, angry chaos swirling around, but as they pushed forward against that dark onslaught, Lily screamed with unrelenting fury. No more. With one final surge, they leaped towards an eye of radiant light, the darkness recoiling in a crescendo of fear. The ground trembled as the battle raged, shadows flailing and shrieking like a phantom storm. And in a blinding flash, everything changed. The storm outside paused, a stillness enveloping the room as shadows dissolved into streams of dark mist, their anguished wails fading into a haunting echo. Lily shielded Jake with her body as the brightness enveloped them completely. For a moment, everything was silent. When clarity returned, she blinked against the new light suffused with warmth. The basement transformed into a sanctuary, an open field bathed in bright sunshine. The remnants of the shadows were gone, leaving behind only thin wisps that dusted the ground. "Mommy?" Jake whispered, his voice threading through the silence. "Yes, darling, we did it." Lily knelt before him, cradling his small face in her hands, wiping away the tears that mirrored her own. "We're safe." As if in response to her relief, the sunlight sparkled around them, illuminating memories of laughter and joy, fragments of life tucked away behind dark corners, now emerging in full bloom. The shadowy apparition stood in the distance, watching them with a softened gaze, a whisper of gratitude lingering in the air. That moment, Lily understood, they had broken the cycle. The rain would fall again, but it no longer carried the weight of curses. Instead, it beckoned life, washing away remnants of a terrifying past. In a breath of calm, she squeezed Jake's hand, a new promise sealed between them. "Let us go home," Lily said, her heart lighter than it had been in some time. Together, they walked toward the horizon, filled with the knowledge that their love had triumphed over despair, creating a bond that no darkness could ever sever again. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss out on the next exclusive stories that will blow your mind. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Seriously, it makes a huge difference. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. What did you think? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.